Welcome to Mighty Married Moms. Join us at our kitchen table twice a week as the Mighty Married Moms, Debbie, Linda, Wendy,
invite spectacular guests to weigh in on staying sexy, vibrant, and healthy,
building marriages with soul-satisfying connection, raising happy, healthy, successful kids. Conversations with Mighty Married Moms will bring you closer to the life you really want. Episode 9. Hi, welcome back to Mighty Married Moms. Wow, I'll tell you, we just finished talking with Pam Ressler, a nurse from stressresources.com, and after we ended up the recording that was launched on Monday, we just kept talking for another half an hour.
Yeah.
There was so much more to talk about. What did you guys find most fascinating? What jumps out at you right away?
There's so many things, it's hard to say which was most fascinating, but I think for me as a health coach, and I talked a lot about with my clients about mindful eating, her whole exercise in mindful eating and the whole idea of mindfulness and how powerful that can be to do what she was talking about is sort of taking internal control of your external circumstances, and mindfulness plays a very important role in that. So I found that discussion really, really fascinating. Mm-hmm. And I'm definitely going to incorporate, Pam, just so you know, I'm going to incorporate that exercise, the 5-minute exercise into my practice as well. So I thought that was really amazing.
Yeah. One thing that I was really struck by was the cultural differences that we operate under here in northeastern United States or the United States in general, which is adversity averse, if I could use that expression.
Okay.
That we're just kind of, anytime a bump in the road happens, it's just a huge a bump in the road or a big thing. It's a huge inconvenience and it shouldn't happen. There's this kind of an approach to life that says things are supposed to go smoothly, and if they're not going smoothly, I need to ramp up somehow, I need to study more, or I need to. But when a bump comes, it's very a time to be resentful and upset about it. Whereas what Pam was sharing with us is that adversity is part of life, and how do you meet that in a way that preserves your mental health, I guess, and preserves your ability to, or actually builds your reserves, not just preserves, but builds your reserves to meet up with life. And that, I'm getting old, 57 years old almost, and yeah, life is more about bumps and hits and things that are unexpected rather than things just going along smoothly and swimmingly and building to a lovely crescendo. That's really not how life works. But yet that's kind of, at least the way I was raised, was to just kind of expect life to be smooth, and when the bumps come, to be antagonized by them. And I really, really appreciated how she really wove that into saying, how can we generate resiliency?
Yeah.
It was just a great concept.
Yeah, I think don't you think we're sort of a point your finger, take a pill, and that's how we solve it all?
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. I think the thing that was interesting for me was to make the connection between resilience and mindfulness. I shared with Pam afterward that mindfulness is something that I've been trying to incorporate in my life on a daily basis. I'm not really good at it because I have that monkey brain that people talk about. Just goes like this and this and this and this. And
I never noticed that about you.
No, I'm sure. And so, well, now you can see, if my brain is like that, how important it is for someone like me to take a few minutes every day and incorporate mindfulness. And perhaps after this conversation with Pam, I'm going to be more intentional about not just doing it once in the morning, but at several times during the day as well. And I think that will help.
Like a touchstone.
Yeah, like a touchstone. And it will help with my creativity as well.
Say more about that. You said that in when we were talking with Pam about. Tell me.
So the subconscious mind. What happens is, if your conscious mind, which is only about, depending on what studies you look at, it's anywhere from 4 to 7% of your brain use. Small, very, very small. Really, your conscious mind, where you're thinking
what I'm experiencing right now is
what I'm
4 to
experiencing
7
about
is really what's going on.
Somewhere in the 4 to 7% range of your
crazy.
brain use. So when people say you don't use 100% of your brain, they're not really accurate. You're not using all of your conscious brain is really what it is. And so it's the subconscious mind that's running everything else. And that means it's running your bloodstream, and it's running the way you breathe, and it's running, so that's all part of your subconscious. But your brain is part of your subconscious mind as well. And what that means is if you give it time to rest, then it has time to process all of the experiences that you've had, and from those experiences grow your creativity. And so if you are feeling stuck, if you're trying to write something, whether it's a proposal or a blog post or an essay or a homework assignment, or there are plenty of artists. Like your family is full of artists, and my son is a composer. So if you're an artist and you're getting stuck, if you spend some time in mindfulness, what that does is it allows your subconscious mind to access all of the memories and the images and the sensations and the feelings that you that are in there in those memories, and from there you're able to grow these new ideas. I mean, that's where invention and inspiration come from.
Interesting.
Absolutely. I have to say, the greatest moment I ever had, I used to do a lot of theater, and I played the character of Emily in a play called Our Town by Thornton Wilder.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where she has died, but she's come back to view the living, and she notices how no one's paying attention, everyone's too busy to notice, and so she's starting to notice all the things she didn't notice, and she needs to say goodbye to the world eventually because it's too painful to see how much we don't notice. And I remember we doing it night after night after night after night, and I stopped being able to drum up the emotion in that scene, and my acting coach at the time, she said, you just need to focus on breathing. Okay. And I cannot tell you the magic that happened. I just focused on breathing, and suddenly the scene became new to me, a whole new experience. It's probably the deepest, best experience I've ever had as an actress, and it was all around the breathing and mindfulness, which is not the word I put to it then, but it brought it all back and better.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Speaking of breathing, there's actually a breathing exercise that people can do, and I use it periodically when I there are a couple of them. Actually, one of them is to do this, and I teach this to the choir at my church, where you hold your hands in and then you breathe out, and then you pull your hands to your chest again as you breathe in, and you hold for a second, and then you breathe out. And I have found that by actually physicalizing the breath, then something about it really calms your mind.
Interesting.
The other thing you can do, if you can't really do that, let's say you're sitting at a red light and you're driving in a car. Another breathing exercise is you breathe in for 7 seconds, and I'm not going to do it right now because it will be boring for our listeners. So you breathe in for 7 seconds, and you gently hold it for 8 seconds, and then you breathe it all out again in about 4 seconds.
Oh.
And then you just take a moment, and then you do that again. And if you do that 2-3 times, you'll find that it slows down your brain, and it gives you an opportunity to refocus and allow your creativity to blossom again.
Yes, somebody who
And it de-stresses you. That's
who
the other
pioneered
thing.
that? Because I know that I've seen a YouTube video on that.
I sent it to you.
You did, yeah. Who
But
was
he
it?
didn't pioneer it, I don't think.
Oh.
It's just Andrew Weil talks about it.
Okay.
Oh,
And
yes,
demonstrates
Andrew
it.
Weil. That's who it was.
Yeah.
I knew.
But
That's why I was looking at you, because I thought it was you.
What I heard, it's a great way to de-stress if you're feeling, really tense. If you've had a verbal altercation with someone in your family or at work, it's a great way to de-stress. But I also see it as a way to enhance mindfulness as well.
Right. And I'm going to have to refer to our notes about the difference between mindfulness
And
between meditation and relaxation.
Right.
So relaxation was a very physiological state
Yes.
of turning down the volume on what's called the sympathetic nervous system, which, can get revved up, and we all know what that is, rapid heartbeat, eyes dilated, all that kind of stuff. Excuse me. And mindfulness and meditation. Meditation, I think I wrote it down, was dropping into the present moment with focus.
Right.
Whereas mindfulness was dropping into the present moment and noticing. So it seems to me that mindfulness can be briefer, if that's...
Yes.
I mean,
Well, meditation is the repetitive action of doing that, right? So it's different than being mindful in the moment. Right.
Right, yeah. So I appreciated hearing the differences between the three, because it just it helped. Yeah, and so these foster relaxation.
Right.
But relaxation is not it is an end in and of itself, but these are great roads to get there.
Yeah. And I would love to listen to our listeners and our viewers. And one of the things that we actually talked about after we finished the recording was how men are not the people who are primarily taking her classes. She says 80% of her mindfulness and meditation students are women, and so assuming most of our listeners and viewers are women, I would love to hear from you. Is this something that you do? Do you practice any sort of mindfulness or meditation? What does it do for you? Do the men in your life practice it? What does it do for them? Or what do you think it could do for them if they felt that that it was something that they were willing to give a try? And if they're not willing to give it a try, why not?
Right.
You know?
Right. And it was like a dagger when she said, when I think you asked the question, Debbie, when how can we help our children? How can we instill this in our children? She said, you have to model it. It was like, like all good things, I suppose. Although that flies in the face of the way I was raised, which was do as I say, not as I do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you were raised by the same father. It sounds like yeah. I didn't recognize you back at the house, but yeah, do as I say, not as I do. And what she's again flipping it on its head: do as I do, not as
Everything we do, we model for our children, and absolutely everything we do, think, and say, whether or not we want to think about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm sure you both noticed, as I have, as you grow older, how much you model your parents' behavior in ways you didn't realize. Sort of like comes out.
It just comes
different
out
ways. Yeah.
Right. Or when you look in the
Very
mirror
powerful.
and you go, "Why is my mother here? I didn't realize I'd invited her to the house." And you go, "Oh, wait, that isn't her." Yeah, that can be quite jarring. But,
Yeah. And just to reiterate what Pam said too, she talked about shifting control from the external to the internal. I don't know if you guys want to say a little bit more about that. That really struck me as well.
Well, what struck me about that was that my initial reaction to the word control, because that's something that I'm trying to pull myself away from.
Right.
So the concept of control, what I heard, what I was beginning to hear and unpack from her was the locus of control is not for me to control my environment and all the people around me and my husband or my kids, but rather how can I find a place inside where I can feel it's okay right now, you're alive, you're breathing, take a minute, make a decision, and I'll tell you a moment that I didn't have that control was about almost 2 weeks ago now. I was involved in a significant car accident, not one that was, thankfully, the car wasn't totaled and I had one very small finger injury, nothing exciting. However, I could not get out of the car because of the way that the car was hit, so I couldn't open and I was in the line of traffic where other people were going to come up behind me and potentially hit me, and I lost control. I was I have a training as a registered nurse, and even in situations where I'm in trouble, I'm not. I can be somewhat level-headed, and then I'll fall apart later. Just let the release out. But in that moment, I was panicking. I was in my car, going, "I need to be let out of the car. Somebody has to get me. Somebody has to get me." And I was weeping and wailing and pounding on the door, and the other people were going, "It's okay. It's all right. We're coming."
Right.
And they were doing what I would be doing normally, which is trying to calm down the situation.
Right.
And when I got out, I said, "I'm not normally like this," but it was such a feeling of fear. When fear,
absolutely,
when fear's at your doorstep, or fear of death, which is what I was fearing, that somebody's going to hit me from behind and send me into next Tuesday. The locus of control was just not available to me.
Oh, that's totally normal in that
Yeah,
circumstance. I mean, in a surprise circumstance like that, no one would expect you to necessarily be in control. They might be more surprised if you were.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. With the adrenaline rushing and the fear and the suddenness of the situation. What's that word? It's
urgency.
I don't remember. But
fight or flight.
No, it's got a specific name where people are freaking out like that under a circumstance. It'll come to us later.
Okay.
Right.
But and that's totally normal. You wouldn't be expected to be under control.
Yeah.
The issue then for resiliency is how do you handle it in the aftermath?
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Are you afraid to get into a car again after that? Are you afraid to drive on the highway again?
Exactly.
That's the resiliency aspect
exactly.
of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think for me too, I like that she talked about challenge. And when a situation happens, danger or fear or whatever sorrow it might be, but where's the opportunity?
I love that.
The opportunity, and I really thought that was a really important piece that she brought up today as well.
She said that was part of the Asian culture. was that when they come up against adversity, they look for the opportunity that lies. Did I hear that right?
I don't remember if that was that.
I don't remember that either.
Maybe I made that up.
But the point was, it's an opportunity. What is the, this was a problem, and I had this issue. What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? It's in looking at it as an opportunity. It's a total reframe.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things she talked about after we shut the cameras off here was her work with high school students in a very affluent town who are, and their parents are bringing them to her, or she's got a program in the school system, and all of them want to get into the Ivy League schools.
Right.
And how will they be resilient when adversity may come that says, you got in. Right, you got into the second tier or whatever. And so how to bring, and is at the age of 16 or 17 a bit late in the game to develop that resiliency? Or so that was an interesting point too. And she said, I'd rather have the moms come in when they call. I go, you got to help my kid, develop some resiliency. Why don't you come in for a couple of sessions? Yeah, I thought that was good, but.
Yeah, and also just teaching them about resiliency, and as she said, not always about doing, but about being. I thought was a big part of that work that she was doing with those kids.
Right.
Taking time out from study, do, to learn how to be and be resilient.
Right.
Well, and she said that the kids are afraid they'll lose their edge.
Yes.
If they take the time to be mindful and not be go all the time, and I've been through that myself. I'm a very driven person. I'm type A, and I imposed that on my kids for a little while until I learned that not everybody is like that, first of all, and secondly, even if they have some of that element in them, it's not necessarily a good thing to nurture it.
Yeah.
Right.
We had one kid who woke up with panic attacks in 10th grade because of overscheduling, and I had to look in the mirror and I said, wow, I think I contributed to this, so we need to stop. We need to figure this out. And, so these mistakes happen. So what's the opportunity in that?
Right.
And I wish I had known mindfulness at that point.
Right.
I keep saying, I wish I'd known then what I know now.
Yeah.
I know. It's the benefits of being of a certain age.
That's
right. Right. Yeah. No. We've agreed we're going to have Pam come back.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Right.
Yes. There's lots more.
Oh my gosh, she's just a wealth of really solid information. And this whole, I think part of it, not only is she a wealth of information, but part of it is it's so necessary to not feel driven to being like, am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Am I productive enough? But just to take some time and step back away from those external draws and develop that capacity inside is very compelling to me.
Inside.
Right?
It's the inside stuff. And what I said to her after we stopped recording again, there was so much great stuff, was I feel like we are so bombarded with information and there's so much that is shoved on us, really from when we're little kids, whether it's watching a lot of TV or video games or social media as the kids get older, and then how many different ways can we get in the news these days, and not all the news is good, and so there's just so much that's beat down on our heads, and if we can take time, there are two things, and this is that intersection that so fascinates me between mindfulness and resiliency. If we take time every day to spend some time in mindfulness, just being really, really present, and I have something else about that, then it will help us be resilient and handle all of those stuff that's coming down on us. And we face that as adults. Our kids face that, especially our teenagers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the idea, right, of you need to floss your teeth every day to have healthy teeth. Like, I could be the best flosser in the world, and if I only flossed my teeth once before I went to the dentist, and you flossed every day, who would have healthier teeth?
There you go.
You would, right? So you have to practice resiliency so that when you do really need it,
Yeah.
you have the skills
It's really
in place.
there. That's a great analogy, Linda.
And
It's a really great analogy.
And actually, I used to get so upset because I know that in English classes in school, they always read these sad, depressing books.
Yes.
And I was like, really? I don't want to read a sad, depressing book. And the story behind it, and there's, it's compelling, I suppose, is that we allow our kids to experience through somebody else the difficulties that life faces, it challenges us with, and then they can experience it in a detached way, so that when they do face the challenges that inevitably come in life, then they have more resources, because even though if they haven't gone through the loss of a grandparent or something like that themselves, they read about
Heidi
it.
has.
Heidi has, or
Right.
whoever, somebody else that they've read about has, and they've at least been able to begin processing what it means to come back from a difficulty like that.
An interesting curriculum decision.
Hey,
I had no
the
idea.
teacher is always here.
That's right. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. That's
The
right.
teacher is always here.
That's right. And Pam's work, which we didn't get to unpack then, but we will next time, about resiliency, is developed. I love those 4 concepts that she had with the connection piece, and how she's really studying that and putting that into practice with social media. How the connection, and social media and being on Facebook gets a lot of bad raps a lot of times from certain circles. But we just had, in my family, we just had an amazing confluence of events that I won't go into in any great detail, other than to say, within 72 hours of my husband reconnecting with somebody on Facebook, within 72 hours, that connection, he hadn't spoken to this person for 30 years, they connected, and within 72 hours, that person is in the middle of a firestorm of life that my husband is uniquely positioned to be able to come alongside and be of assistance.
Wow.
And that connection would never have naturally occurred
without social media.
Without a social media piece. And I'll have to share that with Pam at some point and say, here's a really good example. But Pam has done some great research in regard to how people facing chronic illnesses have leveraged the use of social media and connecting with other people with those same problems across the miles, across the globe, to develop a community where their immune systems are improved. I mean, she's done some really interesting work.
I need to definitely talk to her, because, as many people may know, my book, Social Media Fascination, is all about how to teach kids to use social media well, in the same way that we teach kids to cross the street well and safely, in the same way we teach kids to drive a car safely. Yep. We need to teach them to use social media safely and well.
Yeah.
And so I definitely want to connect with her on that, and then in our next conversation.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. And we're kind of lucky that Pam and Debbie and Linda and I all live within 20 miles of each other, so we might be able to connect a little bit more easily in person too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Was there anything else? One of the things that, I was connecting the dots because we had just had a conversation with Dr. Corey Allen too, and the resiliency in the whole, the both in terms of relationships at home, and resiliency in saying, okay, so you always are going to leave the wet towels on the floor. This is a behavior that I can expect over time. Like how to develop a resiliency and an appreciation, or a looking above or around, and being gracious in that. I heard that kind of interwoven in what she was saying, as well as what you had spoken of in terms of the mindful eating. How we just shovel it all in, much to our detriment, and how do we actually appropriate eating with a sense of mindfulness and being present. And that whole description of, what was it? It was 5 senses, right? Mm-hmm. Looking at it.
Yep.
And then touching it. And then listening smelling it, and then listening to it. That was a very, how would I listen to a raisin? But if I have to spend 60 there you go. Okay.
If you drop it a few times,
Right.
you pick it up in a spoon, or just try
Gotcha.
different ways.
As opposed to just putting it in my hand. Are you speaking raisin? Yeah, got it. And then the tasting. I thought that was just so great.
Yeah, I did too. I love that.
Yeah, I can imagine you're going to use it well in your coaching practice.
Excited about it.
The wheels are spinning, right?
They are,
exactly.
yeah.
No, and it sounds like a great way of teaching, not only about the eating, but we talked about it in our interview. It's a vehicle for being here and being now, and putting that stuff back so that the creativity can grow. It's just got so many applications.
Right.
What she has to say is just.
And I'll just make one
wide-ranging.
last little thing, because our time is getting close to the end here, but she talked about the structural changes that occur in our brains through the practice of mindfulness and meditation, and she talked about how the amygdala becomes smaller, and that is so true. And we were talking about that earlier, really, is how to de-stress, and that's why you want to do it. And the amygdala is that part of the brain that reacts. It's the fight, flight, or freeze part of your body, and it reacts to sensations.
Freeze.
Yep. And because what you do first is you freeze, and then you decide if you're going to
flee or
fight.
Gotcha. Oh,
Yep.
you freeze.
So that part of the brain becomes smaller which is great because then you're not overreacting.
Yes.
That's huge. In our families, if we're not overreacting,
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
that's huge. And then the other part she said that gets larger is the hippocampus, which is the area that's all about learning and memory.
Yeah.
So don't we want to have the opportunity to be able to take in more information
And
when
grow.
it's presented to us?
Right.
So it's interesting, in order to take in more information, instead of just allowing it to bombard us, if we stop and take the time off, and then we open up again, and then we can take it in and learn it and memorize it
You know what
better.
it reminds me of?
What?
That you put out some really good homework tips. And one of your homework
Yeah.
tips was to work hard, help your kid to work hard for like 20, 25 minutes, and then take some sort of a break.
Mental break.
Go make some popcorn, walk the dog, call grandma, Skype a friend, maybe do a little bit of your... what are those?
Your video
games. Your video games, the thumbs, whatever. But to take that mental break, and that's a more effective way of doing the learning
It is.
over time. And so I kept thinking about that when she was talking. Was you're already you're coaching for that. This is great.
Do you have any last minute things before we say goodbye?
I just was, when you were talking about the different parts of the brain and the fight or flight being, a larger piece of it, that also can cause you to gain weight because it raises cortisol levels. Which, so there's a lot of benefits.
A lot of benefits.
Yeah.
So,
physical as well.
Integration. Wow.
okay, so the moral of the story is mindfulness at least.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it.
definitely. Well,
Yeah.
thank you everybody for being
Thank
with the Mighty
you.
Married Moms, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Mighty Married Moms. Tune in twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays to meet fascinating and inspiring guests who will help you create the life you've always wanted.
You can find these episodes and special gifts just for you at mightymarriedmoms.com, as well as a link to our Facebook community.
where we continue the conversation around the kitchen table. Please also help share the love by leaving a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.